Well, the last round, round 8. Gosh, hard to believe the semester's over and you folks are done with playing this game. Of course, you still have the Comp XM remaining. I'll probably send out another little email or video regarding that. We'll see. I'm not going to go through some of the detailed things that I do typically. I'm going to give you more of an overview that, you know, here we are. We ended up guessing Andrews. Well, I do have to tell you that. Now, I will have to, in fact, I'm going to pause because I forgot to do the winner spreadsheet. So let me do that so I can announce a winner. Hang on a second here if I can figure out how this thing works. So clearly, Chester had the highest profits, but look at this, ROE, Andrews, and ROA to Andrews. Not that we score on ROA, but that's a huge difference there, pretty major actually. If we come down though and we look at the earnings per share, they weren't quite able to reach what Chester was. Well, that's $1.50, yeah, just exactly $1.50 less, but that's still pretty close, but a little bit disappointing in that. Look at, there's why their ROE and whatnot was up, although Chester so they paid a huge dividend to try to get rid of some cash, but Chester paid an even bigger dividend. Also bought back some stock, which would have had a positive impact on their earnings per share, something that Andrews should have done to keep pace. Okay, but did not. But in any event, again, an overview is what I'll give you, and that's a little disappointment in that no team actually beat Team Chester. When we look at the scores, 97.5. Andrews was the best in terms of ROE, but fell behind a little bit in some of those other categories, and so put up a pretty good fight, but not enough to catch Chester. And I think I've said in the past, and that's been true for the past 8 or 10 years, that typically at least one team of the student teams has beat and thoroughly beat the computer team. And what happened here? Basically, it's kind of what I've said from the start. You know, in order to be successful at this game, you have to boldly pursue your strategy. And it's obvious we could say that Andrews was the most bold in pursuing their strategy, but not bold at all in terms of what's necessary, or, you know, relative to what's necessary, just not even close to bold. And so what are some of the things that could have been done? Teams just didn't really pursue. Let me give you some examples here. Didn't do a good job of looking at the customer buying criteria. Okay, some of that has to do with like MTBF. You know, here BED low, right? Who cares about MTBF? You can tell teams, you know, looking at your competition, a lot of teams are at 12,000. They kept theirs at 15,000, and so it cost them 90 cents per item for every item that they were making here. 90 cents, you know, and they're selling a million items, so that's costing them $900,000, you know, per round basically. So that's one thing. Okay, here, and you can see Chester got up to 9.5 in terms of their automation in the low end. Okay, able to look at that, get their price down, their labor cost down to $248. They got their material cost down to $398. You know, compare that to like Andrews here. You know, labor cost still $613. You know, why is that? Well, because they got an automation of only 6.5 versus 9.5. Could have to do with TQM spending. It could have to do with some other things. Not overtime. Chester's using 100% overtime, right? Okay, and so those are the things. You know, the student teams did a really poor job of utilizing automation, and I would say actually that the computer team did a poor job of utilizing automation. Generally, I've seen the student teams by the 5th or 6th round oftentimes have an automation rating of 10 in the low end, maybe 7 or 8 by even again the 5th round or so in the traditional, maybe not so much in the high performance and size. Okay, and keep in mind that strategies aren't mutually exclusive. That just because you had a differentiation strategy doesn't mean you don't spend money to lower your costs. Okay, TQM, you guys were a little slow to adopt that. HR spending, a little slow to adopt that, although kind of made up for that. In some areas, the HR spending turned out pretty good. I think I was seeing some savings of about 20% or so. Again, if you look right here, my guess is that, Chester incorporated all those things into lowering their costs. I can tell you this, I've seen teams get their labor cost in the past in their low end down under $1. Okay. Takes a real aggressive approach, okay, both in TQM spending and automation spending and doing it early, and HR spending, okay, but it can get that down much lower even than what Chester had it. So overall, that's and it's not just on cost savings. Let's go down to here. Look where Team Chester is. Okay, and again, Andrews did a pretty good job of keeping pace. Digby a little bit further behind, and Team Baldwin a little bit further behind. They're kind of in that same area, but in order to differentiate yourself at these higher ends, you got to be up here where Chester is, and maybe even a little further. Okay, and then we see teams here kind of scattered. Look at that. A whole bunch of teams kind of right here in between, or not so much the teams, but a whole bunch of products, including Chester's cake. Right? It's slowly drifting. It's going to have to be changed, either made to fit in the low end or, jump up. My guess is that Chester didn't participate real well in the traditional segment this particular round. So those are just kind of the main things. But again, the main thing is choosing your strategy and then really pursuing it. If you were a differentiator, you should have been up there on those three, on these three high-end products, performance, size, and high. You should have been up here all the time, pushing the outside limit of this so that during the year they would actually pass through where your product is. Okay, if you were a low cost, you should have been at 10 automation by the 5th or 6th round, even if you borrowed a lot of money to do that. Borrowing money and using leverage would have been really, really smart at the beginning of this game to invest in those things that would either save you money and or push your products up here to the front, and borrow tons of money. You might have had too much leverage at the beginning, but oh well. What do we have here for some of the percentage? Andrews did a nice job here of getting that up, and you see actually quite a bit better than Chester's, and so did Digby. Okay, so Chester used that modestly. TQM, these are getting pretty close to maxing out for Andrews and Digby, I think, if I remember right, with a lot of diminishing returns, and Team Baldwin. Okay, pushing that a little earlier when you had that opportunity would have been helpful in lowering your costs. Okay. I think in general, that's pretty much what I have to say in terms of the overall performance in this particular game. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was a better way, maybe rather than a lecture and testing type of a class, for you guys to have your senior seminar. I wish you all the best of luck in the spring semester, and I'm sure I'll be seeing and working with some of you in that upcoming spring semester. Thanks.